Hello and welcome back to Stop and Go F1 for this, our reactions to the Austrian Grand Prix. My goodness, Austria always delivers, doesn't it? A race full of excitement, well not full, very exciting start, semi-exciting ending. There was a bit in the middle where I don't think I wrote anything for a good 10 or 15 laps, but you know what? We don't expect excitement every lap, we're not too greedy. But it has been a fantastic weekend of F1, F2, F3. Haven't seen the F1, sorry, if you haven't seen the F2 and F3 reactions, they're out on the channel now. We'll get into all things F1 right now. But before we do, remember to like and subscribe, and of course, a huge shout out to the members: Dakota, The Joyous James, Robin Myers, Cinnamon Strudel, Michael Johnson, Mr. Eurovision 1986, Philip Draganzik, No Edam on Sandwiches, and Sarah Jowett. Let's get to the Austrian Grand Prix, where we see Lando Norris on pole position after a fantastic lap yesterday, Charles Leclerc alongside him, World Championship leader Oscar Piastri in third place. And for what seems like the first time in a very, very long time, there was no changes to the grid, no grid penalties, no pit lane starts. And although it did seem like we might maybe have a pit lane start for a very brief moment, more on that in a little bit. As for tyres, Gasly, Hajar, Colapinto, Behrman, Hulkenberg, all on the soft tyres, everyone else on the medium tyres. It was the C5 soft tyre, which explains why it was being used in the race, because the C6 barely lasted an entire lap. But as we get away for the formation lap, Carlos Sainz is stuck in his grid box, claiming the car cannot get out of first gear. He was starting down in 19th place after a disappointing qualifying yesterday. What was quite strange here was no one was really doing anything. Carlos Sainz was just sat there. The rest of the grid was out on the formation lap. And then they start to push the car, but as they start to push the car, Lando Norris is coming back round the last corner to complete the formation lap, and then they decide to abandon the lap. Now, of course, this is one of the shorter laps on the calendar, but still, it took them an awful long time to decide, hey, maybe we should do something about that Williams that is just stuck there on the grid. Either way, they abort the start, they push Sainz into... They go to push him into the pit lane, but then, out of nowhere, the car just starts up again. So Carlos Sainz goes and does his formation lap, then pulls into the pit lane to start from the pit lane, and then all of a sudden, his car's on fire. Both of the rear brakes on the car just light on fire. They put the fire out and wheel him into the garage. Carlos Sainz gets a did not start for this race. Then we have a bit of a break as we recalibrate and get ready to go again. We have another formation lap, and for a brief moment, it seemed like Nico Hulkenberg was not going to get away. But he did, thankfully, and we actually had a race. The race actually started, and it was a good start from Lando Norris, but the start of the day, if that was an award, would go to Oscar Piastri, who shot up past Charles Leclerc immediately into P2 and challenged Lando Norris down into turn 3, was not able to take the lead, but was there on him right away. Did the exact thing that he needed to do here after what he thought was a disappointing qualifying yesterday. We've seen a lot of times this year when the two McLarens are going to be fighting for a win, what we've seen a lot is Oscar Piastri get away and Lando gets stuck behind, normally, Max Verstappen. Then it takes him a few laps to get past him. By the time he gets past him, that gap is far too big and he can't close it down again. Oscar Piastri did exactly what he needed to do. Meanwhile, further back, Kimi Antonelli hits Max Verstappen. So this was going into turn 3. Antonelli was quite a way down the grid, to be fair. Looks like he hadn't had the best start in the world. Got kind of caught out by the traffic in front of him, braking a bit earlier than he thought. Kind of dived into turn 3. Then you slammed on the brakes, huge old lockup. Max Verstappen is just there, nothing he could do, hits him, both of them are out of the race. If there was a small percentage of Max Verstappen still being in this title battle, surely it is over now. With his, is this his second it's his first DNF of the year, but of course after what happened in Spain and what's happened basically throughout the year with a lot of results not necessarily going his way, surely he needs an absolute miracle to still be in it now. Although Max Verstappen has produced one or two miracles before, so who's to know? But yeah, upsetting for both of them. You know, a very rookie error from a rookie for Kimi Antonelli there. I imagine he will get a penalty going into Silverstone, a grid penalty, I think, but, you know, who knows? sometimes the FIA don't give out penalties to Mercedes cars. Who said that? Anyway, back to the race now, and the safety car is out until lap 4. The big gainer of the first lap, actually, was Alexander Albon, gained 5 places up to P7. So a good start to the race for Albon, although it would go massively downhill from here. A good restart for Lando Norris, manages to keep the lead. George Russell putting a hell of a lot of pressure on Lewis Hamilton. A great little battle between the two of them, although it was very brief as it turns out. The Mercedes did not have anywhere near the pace of the Ferrari throughout the rest of this race. Lando Norris now is setting fastest lap after fastest lap, but Oscar Piastri just staying within the DRS for these opening laps to keep with him. Oscar Piastri goes for a dive into turn 4 on lap 6, but he's too far back. Albon passes Gasly for P6 on lap 10, and now Oscar Piastri on lap 11 goes into turn 4, takes the lead from Lando Norris, but Lando Norris hits the switchback and has DRS down into turn 4, retakes the lead. Oscar Piastri has a little bit of a look into turn 6, but can't get it right. They carry on from there. Wonderful, wonderful racing from both McLaren drivers for the lead here in one of the best sections of any circuit all year. I think possibly like the most underrated section of track. That turn 4 to turn 6, because the way it's set up is perfect. You can hit the dive into turn 4, and then there's the DRS line just before, so it could mean that you get the move and then you get the DRS, so you get to run away with it, or if you get the overtake done early, it means the guy you've just overtaken has the DRS, then you can overtake into 4, a little bit of 5 and 6. Beautiful. We've seen some wonderful moves across all the formulas this weekend in that section of track. Really, really good stuff. Meanwhile, Gabriel Bortoleto, after his wonderful qualifying yesterday, continues to make some moves up the track. He passes Pierre Gasly for P7. Gasly on those soft tyres pits on lap 13. Oscar Piastri still super close to the back of Lando Norris here, but cannot find a way through. It seemed at this point, obviously he wanted to get in front, but it seemed like Lando was maybe just playing with him at this point. Like I said, into that turn 3 section there, if you allow your opponent to go through early, it means that you have the DRS going into turn 4. And I'm sure at this point here, in like lap 13, lap 14, I think Lando was purposely maybe slowing down a little bit into 3 to try and catch Oscar going through there so he'd have the DRS into 4. But I think Oscar kind of read it a bit and went, no, I'm not going to overtake you here. I'm going to try and get you into 4, but he wasn't able to do it. Lando Norris had supreme pace at this point. The person who didn't have supreme pace was Alexander Albon, who was out. An awful, awful day for the Williams team. After only 17 laps, both of the cars are out of the race. Meanwhile, Yuki Tsunoda has a little tap with Lance Stroll, and it would not be his last tap of the day. George Russell pits on lap 19, and Oscar Piastri goes for a huge dive bomb into turn 4 on Lando Norris for the lead. A big old lockup, and they nearly make contact. It was very, very close. That was on lap 20. This is, I think, the moment Oscar Piastri lost the race for me, because he flat spotted his tyres massively, and then Lando Norris pits on that lap. There was a bit of discussion between Lando and his engineer that if they thought Oscar was going to get past, to pit, otherwise to stay out. And at this point here, Lando comes in. I don't really think Piastri was going to get in front of him, but then Oscar is kind of saying on his radio, look, I've got a flat spot here, but the team are like, well, let's just keep on going out. And then they wait about 4 laps to pit Oscar Piastri. He comes in on lap 24. And I think those 4 laps are what cost him the race, because he comes out and he's 5.5 seconds behind Lando Norris. And that time would ebb and flow throughout, depending on traffic or whatever Lando was doing. But I really think those extra laps on those tyres with the flat spots is what cost him. If Oscar had come in the lap behind, maybe he would have been about 2 seconds behind, and maybe there's something he can do with that there. But yeah, I think for me, that's when Lando Norris won this race. Meanwhile, we go to Sauber now. Nico Hülkenberg is told to let Bortoleto go past, because Bortoleto was on a different strategy here. Bortoleto had the supreme pace, but Hülkenberg is also battling Stroll and Gasly for position at this point in the race. So Hulkenberg gets past Stroll, and he's like, well, I can't let Bortoleto go past now because Stroll's in the way. Bortoleto gets past Stroll. It's like, okay, well, how about now? Then Hulkenberg gets past Gasly. He goes, well, I can't do it now because Gasly's there. Bortoleto gets past Gasly. They make the move past, in the end, Bortoleto in front of Hulkenberg. There's a really nice move from Lewis Hamilton on Liam Lawson at this point through turns 6 and 7. Lawson hadn't pit at that point, Hamilton had. But nonetheless, a very good move. Further back, there's a little battle between Tsunoda and Colapinto, and Tsunoda just hits him. Does a little spin for Colapinto, but Colapinto is able to continue. Tsunoda has to pit for a new front wing, and he would get a 10-second penalty for causing a collision. Liam Lawson, who I believe went for the one stop, was at 5th in this point on lap 33, and he does pit for the first and only time. A fantastic race from Lawson. I haven't really mentioned him here too much. I'll mention him a lot at the end, but it was a wonderful, wonderful race from him. Now, on lap 41, there was a bit of discussion of, whose tyres were where and all this kind of stuff, and Piastri starts to cut into Lando's lead. But again, I never really truly believed it. I felt it was more because Lando was in traffic more than Piastri's pace was overall that fantastic. I mean, Piastri's pace was good and he was setting fastest laps, but I feel like it was never in a true place of he's going to get him. Norris does pit from the lead on lap 53, and Oscar Piastri pits the lap after, which makes me ask, what was the point of those 4 extra laps between them on the first pit stops then? If you're going 4 laps extra on that first pit stop, why not go 4 laps extra here so you have the fresher tyres at the end of the race? It didn't make much sense to me, and whatever. Anyway, this is when another moment where Piastri lost the race, because he comes out behind the fighting Tsunoda and Colapinto. They are fighting for position at this point, and they're going out of turn 3, and Colapinto seems to just start fighting Piastri as well, and forces Oscar Piastri onto the grass, despite the fact that Piastri was lapping him. On the replay, it looked like Colapinto was maybe trying to get the slipstream from Tsunoda rather than fight Piastri, and he just didn't know that Piastri was there. A failure of both himself for not looking in the mirrors, and also his engineer for not saying, my God, one of the race leaders is right behind you, don't force him on the grass, you idiot. But there we go. 5-second penalty for that for Colapinto for forcing another driver off the track. At this point, Piastri starts to set these fastest lap times again, and it seems like a big uphill battle with about 10 laps to go. We get the AWS graphic on the bottom being like, he's going to get him. In 3 laps, he's going to get him. And even Norris did seem concerned on the radio, being like, I need some more pace here, please. But again, it never truly felt like Piastri was going to get him. Because at one point, he cut it down to about 1.5 seconds. And you're thinking, well, right, if he can get half a second here, he's got DRS, we can have a battle towards the end. But then a lap later, he's 1.7 seconds back. Then he's 1.9. And the commentators are like, oh, he's under 2 seconds. Like, yeah, but 2 laps ago, he was 1.5. So I never truly thought that he was going to get him, but there you go. There is a beautiful battle between Bortoleto and Fernando Alonso at this point for P7. Bortoleto's manager being Fernando Alonso and the Aston Martin. But yeah, great stuff between the two of them. And then the race leaders get involved as well, because they are lapping Bortoleto and Alonso. Of course, Alonso and Bortoleto have to let them pass, but also don't want to slow down too much because they don't want to give away a points-paying position. A wonderful little battle and drama here as Piastri is still closing in on Lando Norris. There was a brief moment where it looked like Alonso nearly hit Norris coming out of turn 4, which would have been the utmost drama if Fernando Alonso, whilst fighting his protege in Gabriel Bortoleto, took out the race leader and handed the win to Oscar Piastri. That would have been the ultimate drama, but alas, no. Everyone keeps it on the track, everyone keeps it clean, and as we cross the line, Lando Norris does win the Austrian Grand Prix. A fantastic win from Lando Norris. I think that is his best win ever. I'm trying to think back of his other wins. Miami obviously sticks out, and Singapore was a good win, but there was a few mistakes here and there where he would tap the wall. I think this race weekend is his best race weekend ever. Completely dominated qualifying, and you could say, well, yeah, that's because of that yellow flag here and there, but either way, he set a fantastic lap time. And then from here, I never truly felt like he was gonna lose this race. Maybe there was a moment at the start where they were dueling that I thought maybe Piastri could get past him, but even in those moments, Piastri had the DRS, and he still was not as quick as Lando Norris was. So a fantastic job from Lando, a perfect way to bounce back from the Canadian Grand Prix. There was a lot of questions on him going in, a lot of pressure on him going in, constant media being like, well, Lando, you crashed into your teammate, what the hell's going on? But yeah, wonderful way to bounce back here. Now 15 points off the back of Oscar Piastri in the World Championship going into Silverstone next weekend. Oscar Piastri comes home in P2. A good race from him as well. Not too far behind Lando Norris at all, but like I said, never truly felt like he was in control of it. Charles Leclerc, another podium for him. Really good job. Another podium for Ferrari. Lewis Hamilton comes home in P4 for his joint best result of the year. He still was quite a margin off of Leclerc, but still, good points for him. George Russell in 5th, really the best he could do, I felt, because he wasn't as fast as those lead McLarens or the lead McLarens or the Ferraris, but was much faster than everyone else. So the best he could do there in P5. Liam Lawson in P6, my personal driver of the day. When the thing popped up saying vote for your driver of the day, my first thing was, well, it's Liam Lawson. I'll vote for him. Then he didn't even come in the top 3. I was quite surprised by. But his best ever F1 race result in P6, the best Red Bull result of the day, the only Red Bull car to score points on the day. Liam Lawson, a fantastic weekend for him. Fernando Alonso in P7 gets his joint best result of the season. A man who a month ago, we were talking about, will he ever score points? He's scored points quite a bit since then. Wonderful job from Alonso. Fantastic results for Gabriel Bortoleto. He did win Driver of the Day. His first points in his F1 career. A fantastic job from him. I'm really happy for him. Anyone who's been watching my stuff for a while knows how much of a fan I am of Gabriel Bortoleto. So a wonderful qualifying yesterday. A wonderful race result today. Hopefully more of this to come from Bortoleto this season. In 9th is Nico Hülkenberg, giving that team their first double points result since the Qatar Grand Prix of 2023. A wonderful result for the team, very happy for them. And then Esteban Ocon completes the points, his 5th points position of the year. Ollie Behrman just missing out in 11th place. Isaac Hadjar will be disappointed in 12th to miss out on points there. Pierre Gasly comes home in 13th, although he struggled all the way through this race. Every time he was on the radio, it sounded like he was just having an awful, awful time. Lance Stroll was 14th. I didn't even know he was in this race, to be honest with you. And then we had the constant duel of Colapinto and Yuki Tsunoda. Colapinto comes home in 15th place. Yuki Tsunoda is last of the finishes of this race, meaning that Red Bull score 0 points at the Austrian Grand Prix, the first race weekend where Red Bull have failed to score points since Bahrain 2022. If you throw your mind back to that race, it was the first race for the Red Bull powertrains, and it was Max and Checo, and they were doing pretty well until the last 4 or 5 laps, and then both engines failed. So Red Bull have scored points in every race since then until now. DNF for Alex Albon, a DNF for Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen's first DNF since the Australian Grand Prix of 2024. That race, of course, ended with a engine failure, and this race here ending with a collision with Antonelli. Nothing he could do, but there you go. DNF for Antonelli, who I expect will get a penalty going into the Silverstone Grand Prix, probably a 3 or 5 place grid penalty for that race. Good news for Max Verstappen, there wasn't much this weekend, but the good news is, because he's passed this race weekend, he has lost 2 penalty points. So he now has only 9 of his 12 penalty points. So it still is possible for him to have 1 incident and still receive a race ban, because he only needs 3 points, but it's getting better for him, I guess. And then finally a DNS for Carlos Sainz, which means no points for the Williams team, and also means over the course of the last 3 races, Williams have scored the least points of any team, only scoring 1 point in Canada. So Williams, who've been flying high, had a wonderful start to the season. Over the last 3 races, has not gone their way. But there you go. That is the Austrian Grand Prix. A lot to talk about, a lot to dissect. We're back tomorrow for all things driver ratings. We'll have some very high scores there. We'll have some very low scores as well. So join us for that one as well. Let me know what you thought of this race. And of course, we're back next weekend for all things Silverstone. Should be very, very fun. That is next weekend, isn't it? I'm going to check my calendar here. Yes, it is. It is next weekend. So that should be very, very fun. Of course, check out all the stuff on the F2 and the F3 because that was madness, as always, this weekend. But apart from that, I will see you tomorrow for all things driver ratings. Until then, have a good one. Goodbye.